All right. Thank you, everybody. Before we start, I'd like to begin this event with a territorial acknowledgement as a reminder of a call to action for ourselves and to others. And today, I'm coming to you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. We recognize past and ongoing injustices perpetrated against Indigenous peoples as part of the colonial project in Canada, including violence, oppression, land theft, and harmful attempts to erase culture. Given Canada's colonial foundation and how it shapes the discourse and practice of science, especially genetics and related health and biomedical research, Genome Canada, which is the organization that I'm from, commits to fostering Indigenous truth, reconciliation, and engagement in our programs to address the gaps in the participation of underrepresented, equity-deserving and Indigenous groups in Canada, its genomic research agenda, landscape, data sets, and governance. And so I'd like everybody to think about where they are coming from today and think about the land that they're currently situated on. So first of all, thank you all for joining us for this Canadian Science Policy Conference pre-conference meeting. We're joining today to talk about important policy and research issues around innovation in the agriculture, agri-food sectors. And I think thinking about how that innovation can be mobilized to tackle some of the complex challenges associated with climate change. We know that agriculture sector contributes to climate change, but importantly, it can also play an important role in addressing the challenges of reducing impact. However, there are a number of policy and other issues that can be barriers towards doing this. And I think we have an excellent panel of speakers today from across different players in the agriculture space, academia, industry, and users and implementers. And they're going to talk a little bit about where they see some of the opportunities and challenges for agriculture from their perspectives. So today we have Stuart Stewarts from the University of Saskatchewan. Stuart's an associate professor in the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics at the University of Saskatchewan, and he holds the Agri-Food Innovation and Sustainability Enhancement Chair. Stuart's research focused on sustainability, agriculture, innovation, and food, and he publishes a weekly blog on these topics. And Stuart, maybe you can, during your talk, tell us about where to find your blog, but we can put it in the chat too. Sure. He has well over 100 academic publications and is recognized as a leading expert on barriers to innovation and regulatory efficiency. So Stuart's recognized by the Agriculture Students Association of the University of Saskatchewan's College of Agriculture and Bioresources as the 2021 Professor of the Year. And he was presented with the Champion Award by the Farm and Food Care Saskatchewan for 2021 and Crop Life Canada's Grassroots Award of the same year. So Stuart, so the next speaker will be Kelly Tanaka. Kelly is the Chief Scientific Officer at Nutri Ag Limited. It's an innovative crop nutrition company that provides solutions to farmers across North America and numerous countries worldwide. Nutri Ag specializes in the development of novel high-quality products to help growers meet increasing yield demands and to help crops flourish in the significant and evolving environmental challenges seen annually. At Nutri Ag, Kelly leads a multidisciplinary research team and is responsible for all aspects of product development. This includes product selection, formulation, development, efficacy testing, product registration. And prior to Nutri Ag, he spent 7 years in biotechnology sector developing anti-infective and anti-cancer drugs holds a PhD in chemistry from Simon Fraser University, and is a co-author in a number of peer-reviewed scientific publications and articles, and a co-inventor in a number of patents. And last but not least, our third presenter is Kelly Burway. Kelly grew up on a mixed farm south of Portage Prairie, Manitoba, where they raise beef cattle on a cow-calf operation, grow grains and oilseeds, as well as operates a dairy. Rachel attended the University of Manitoba and obtained a BSc in agriculture, majoring in animal science. And for each summer during her university career, she worked as a summer agronomist at numerous crop input retails, and is now an agronomist at John Eyre Limited at Portage La Prairie. She holds her certified crop advisor certification, as well as a professional agrologist within the Manitoba Institute of Agrologists. Rachel is passionate about all things agriculture and spends her spare time helping out with her family farm, sitting on boards such as Canadian Young Farmers Forum and Manitoba's Young Farmers, and has started a small apiary with her husband, Ken. She's excited to be part of an important discussion for the future of agriculture and climate change. And so, Stuart, we'd ask you to open the discussion with your thoughts on some of the challenges facing agriculture and some of the, particularly from the university perspective.
Thank you, Karen. So welcome everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to participate. I just want to acknowledge the stakeholders in my research chair and thank them for their support. So Canada has a long history of being a global top 10 country in terms of how much money and support we put into innovation pipelines and R&D, but similarly, we've suffered a long challenge of how do we get technologies out of our pipeline. And so you can see that we're recognized as a leader in terms of ICT, but we really fall short on several key areas. So anticipating sort of where the markets are going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, which is really where climate change is looking. How are we going to have technologies in the marketplace that can help reduce GHG or increase carbon sequestrations, these types of things? We're not doing well. Incentivizing innovation and R&D. Again, we are, from where I am at the university, the government of Canada gets a fail on both of those. And even when it comes to some of the economic readiness factors, again, we're talking about a C grade here. So where are we at? So just trying to bookend this a little bit, the Global Innovation Index provides some really insightful information, and you can see top 10 in terms of what we put into our innovation pipelines across the country. Yet there's a growing gap. So we've dropped a point over 3 years from 22nd to 23rd in terms of what we actually commercialize in terms of technologies. And I think this is illustrative of the fact that so much of Canada's R&D capacity is focused on very blue sky research. We're not focusing on technologies that are close to commercialization. Our innovation is incredibly disconnected from the potential or the likelihood for the private sector to adopt public sector R&D. And so that's creating this significant gap in terms of what our innovation pipeline is actually able to commercialize. So this creates a significant challenge for us in terms of how much value is there between the public and private sectors collaborating around innovative technologies. We've got a lot of experience in the ag sector. Public-private collaborations have led to the sequencing of multiple genomes. Yet we're seeing that the technologies that have been commercialized are leading to significant environmental benefits that are really helping agriculture address climate change. We've reduced tillage. We've reduced greenhouse gas emissions from tillage. We're increasing carbon sequestration. So to further enable more innovative technologies, we're going to need more investment, but at the same time, we also need less regulation. That we can't have increased calls for greater regulatory risk assessment, greater regulatory oversight, if we're going to have the innovative capacity to be successful. As Karen mentioned, I publish a lot of information on a weekly basis about this, and you can either follow myself or my Safe Food on Twitter, and there's our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Kelly, would you like to go next with your thoughts on some of the challenges and opportunities you face in industry?
Sure. Let me see if I can. Are you seeing the right screen?
No, we're just seeing, I think we're just seeing you. We're not seeing your slides.
Okay.
The slide.
Well, it was just a standard Nutri slide, so I don't think it's really that important. Let me try once more though, real quick. Are you seeing the right slide now?
No. No, I don't think so.
All right. Well,
You can see your screen, but it's not on the slide.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I don't think that's the slide either.
no, you're seeing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to be able to get it, so I'll just stop sharing, I think. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Have I stopped sharing?
No, it's still there. Maybe just, okay, perfect. That's gone. Okay.
Yeah, so as Karen mentioned, so thank you for the invitation to be here. My name is Kelly Tanaka. I work for the small company Nutri, and our goal is to develop innovative new products for the ag sector. And we, as was mentioned, we service a number of different areas within North America and abroad. And the focus for us lately has really trying to find innovative new solutions to help growers improve their yields, deal with abiotic stress, and help with nutrient use efficiency. As Stuart mentioned, we're very cognizant of the idea of trying to come up with ways to help the environment, decrease the environmental impact of fertilizers. And so, one of the products that we have is a software that we call Nutri Analytics, and it's utilizing, optimizing what we know about applications of nutrients to optimize yields, from the timing and the type of fertilizer that you use, how to improve irrigation cycles, how to improve the quality of fruit through nutrition. And along with that, we're looking at, new novel technologies, and that's what sort of brought us here. We were fortunate enough to get funding through Genome Canada to work with Trent University on a novel, innovative bacteria that we think is, really going to help with nutrient use efficiency and yields on a number of different crops. But the regulatory side of things is very slow, and understanding how these products work to help, develop the right kind of product, as there are many different opportunities from academia or from researchers around in terms of, if you're looking at a microbe in particular, choosing the right one and understanding, how that's going to best be suited for the grower. That takes a lot of work, and understanding sort of the mechanism of action is something that we're using here with proteomics, and and sort of trying to better understand the mechanism, not only from a safety perspective, but from a return on investment for the grower. So that's it.
Thank you, Kelly. And Rachel, perhaps you can give us a little bit of your perspective from both an agronomist and also from understanding the needs of the farmers.
Yeah, for sure. So hi, everybody. I'm Rachel, and as Karen said in the intro, I'm an agronomist at a locally owned crop inputs retail and portage here. as well as a farmer on my family's mixed family farm. When I was first asked to join the panel for today's discussion, it was because someone stumbled across my name on the Canadian Young Farmers Board of Directors, and I'm very excited to be here. I think that asking a young farmer and a young person in agriculture with, I guess I have dirt on my boots experience is a great idea for this kind of a panel. I think it's super important that when it comes to innovation and research, that the end user has a say on the direction of these projects. I could speak all day about how we rely on technology and research to keep our industry moving forward. But I'm excited to bring the perspective that we need to support the guys on the front line. We need to give farmers all the tools that they need to truly be successful, and tools that they want is kind of where I'm coming from. You could come up with all these cool tools and solutions, but if a farmer doesn't want them and it's not going to use them, that's not going to help move our industry forward. But yeah, we want to help farmers be successful, to help mitigate their impact on the environment, and ultimately help them feed the world. When I think about the role that a farmer plays in sustainable agriculture and policy coalition, I immediately think that we're the ones that have to use this technology. So that I hope it's exceptional, and I hope that it's going to be a great fit on my farm, which is extremely difficult because in Canada alone, we have a million different ways to farm. So coming up with new technology that works on broad acres is really important. When a farmer's going to the field, we're thinking about getting the crop in the ground, taking the best care of that crop as we possibly can, and then getting it in the bin and selling it. So ultimately, we can feed our family first. That's our way of life. That's how we make our living, right? And then we feed the world. So it's kind of a two-faced coin there for sure. We have a very hard job to do, and sometimes lack of regulation on new products coming out, lack of testing, lack of trust, I guess, in some of these new products too, make it very difficult to make decisions in season and what we use on crops. So I think farmers have responsibility to try these new products, but also I think there's responsibility on the innovation side and the private sector side to really do their due diligence to help us do our job too. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming at for this discussion today.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your perspectives. And I think there were a couple of common themes that the three of you sort of really raised. And I mean, a couple of them are things like research for having applicability and something that is really meeting a need, the need of the farmer, the need of the commercial entity, and I think so maybe we can sort of delve into that a little bit, but I think one of the big things that you all raised was the question of regulation and how regulation can really seem to be a barrier in some ways to innovation and uptake of that innovation. So maybe Rachel, as an agronomist, because I think you had mentioned earlier, you have a number of different products that you have the options to use. What do you see as some of the challenges around the regulation or helping you make the choice as to which products you should be promoting to your customers?
Yeah, so when I look in our chem shed, for better lack of terms, but when I look in there, I have thousands of different products and I have to help make a decision on my customers' acres. And they're looking at me for information. I'm the trusted source, and we have to make a decision. And lots of the new products, so you talk like biostimulants and stuff like that, maybe aren't tested as vigilantly as like crop input, like chemicals, like herbicide would be. And that makes it really tough to know where this data is coming from, what the actual research structure looked like on the other end. And lots of times it's not done in my area of trading. So is it going to work on the acres that I'm helping advise on and that kind of thing? So when I know when you're going to school, that's one of the biggest things you're taught is to learn how to look at data, pick good data, and then go from there. And it's been really tough lately trying to figure that out and trying to trust new chemical companies and new companies that are coming out with new products that we don't have any experience using, and they're brand new and they're $10 an acre. So it's hard to figure out if we're going to be throwing out $10 an acre and hoping it works, or do we save that $10 an acre, put it in our pocket, and try again next year with something different. So yeah, there's a lot of different things going on there, and it's just tough all around.
And I think that's a really key point, is that ultimately these innovations have to make financial sense to the farmer as well. Stuart, you've done a lot of work in this area. Do you have any suggestions, solutions that could help in terms of how we might reduce the regulatory burden around some of the new innovations? Or
I think it's going to be very important that we continue to rely on evidence-based policy. We've seen the disaster that exists within the European Union, where they've incorporated a very rigid approach to the precautionary principle. So largely the EU has decided that if you can't guarantee there's going to be no risk from commercializing a technology, you're better off not commercializing the technology. And the reality is that every technology that gets commercialized is going to have risk. Yet our society has adopted this concept that innovation needs to be zero risk, which is a completely impossible scenario to ever get to in terms of any innovation. So, would we have adopted sailing if we knew that people were going to fall overboard and drown? Would we have adopted fire if we knew that ultimately our house was going to burn down and people, forests would burn down? So, if we look at the practicality of saying that we have to minimize risks as much as we possibly can, but risk is still part of the commercialization process. I think that's very important to our regulatory framework, is to have acceptable and manageable thresholds for risk.
thank you. And Kelly, from an industry perspective, what are your thoughts on and what would help you?
Yeah, I think that the risk piece is one that we're faced with every day, because as soon as we try and register a new product, and we're talking about a fertilizer, the timeline is at least 1 year. That's sort of the guideline. So we've fully developed a product. We still have to wait a year for it to get approval, assuming that the risk, as Stuart says, is low. But prior to that, to address Rachel's concern is, well, how well does it work? And so there's a huge amount of time that's involved to try and understand how well a product works, especially if you want it to be used over a large geographical location or area, right? As she mentioned, how she grows and how her farmers grow is different than how they might do it here in Ontario or Atlantic Canada. And so trying to find products that are truly innovative, that are low risk, that can get to the market quickly in a cost-effective way is very, very challenging.
And I think that's really one of the key things that we need to really try and address, because if we can't address some of these challenges, a lot of what the innovation that we are developing may end up on shelves and not actually being of use to the communities of which it's being developed for. We only have a few more minutes left in this session. Is there anything anybody wants to add, or anything that you think that we haven't really touched upon around particularly these areas of risks and adoption, perhaps?
I would add that to be truly successful in innovating quickly, I think it's the dialogue that companies like ours have with the regulatory side, but probably more importantly with the end user, and making sure that we fully understand what their needs are. But also, I think it needs to be that the expectation for a company like ours, or any company that's selling a specialty product or a fertilizer, that one shoe doesn't fit all. And so understanding that products are probably not going to be as broadly used, I think, to be truly successful, which makes it obviously very challenging for a company. But that's really, I think, the reality that we're going to be faced with going forward.
So actually, following on from that question, how do we ensure that the products are not just being developed for the large farms, the large sort of customers that would be for you, and that we still really can give access to the innovation to smaller, perhaps more diverse farming types?
I wish I had the answer to that question, but I don't, because at the end of the day, it goes through that filter system of acceptance and viability from a commercial perspective. And it's, what comes out through that funnel is, things that are profitable, and not necessarily that are maybe the most innovative or the most generally broadly applicable to Canadian farmers.
Karen, just to follow on that, I think what we need is more options, right? The way we're going to advance this is to have a more open pipeline that's allowing more products into the marketplace, which gives farmers of all sizes, whether they're farming a few thousand acres or a few tens of thousands of acres, more products are going to give farmers of all farm sizes the opportunity to test and adopt those that work best for their circumstances. So whether it's someone in Rachel's area that it's got heavier soils, more precipitation, what works innovatively there probably won't work for the dry land area, sort of between say Drumheller and Swift Current as an example, right? So more technologies, I think is a really good way to look at this.
So Rachel, does that then cause you more headaches in trying to identify which of them to promote? Or
I don't think so, because then we have specialized products for our area. So instead of me trying to carry something that my neighbor in Saskatchewan is trying to use and having good luck with it out there, I know I'm not going to have success with that on my 100% tillage farm or whatever, when not promoting that. But I think having the options that are better suited for our area, and the more research you do and the more products that are developed, the better products we can find that are suited to our area. So I would get on board with that too.
Great, thank you. Great discussion. We're actually going to open the floor up to, we have a couple of different questions that we could go into for further discussion, but we're going to give the viewers, the participants on this call, a poll, which you should see in front of you, which sort of, if you can indicate which would be the area you'd like us, the panel, to delve into a little bit. So there's shared interests. Are there areas where all stakeholders might agree, where we can move forward on? Quick wins, managing conflicts, and future tech solutions. So please indicate which would be your choice, and we can delve into that question with the panel. Thank you. Right. I don't
more
know.
seconds on the poll.
Okay, so it looks like what people would be interested in, some thoughts on from the panel members, is quick wins. What can we do? What can we do right now that would, now of course I can't read the actual question there, but sorry, get my notes. Yeah, what can we do right now that we could really start the conversation and start working together on? So I'll get rid of the poll. So Kelly, do you have any, from industry's perspective, do you have anything that you could think that we could do right now that would really help move innovation forward and not only move it forward, but would be something that could actually be a win for the farmers, for industry, and for academia?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how quick it is, but I think, it all starts with understanding what, a significant challenge is that needs to be addressed. And I think based on this panel, I think climate change and the impact of drought and heat stress is something that we're all, I think, thinking about on a regular basis, and how it's going to affect farmers. And so how do we, address something like that? And I think that I can't do it by myself, and I'm sure that Rachel, I hope, feels the same way. And so it's really about a panel of people that have, the same common interest to try and address something like that. And I don't think that there is a lot of that going on. And I'll just add, which I haven't mentioned, we're a company that needs to survive. And so the one thing that we're always cognizant of is the IP, or the trade secret that we can also develop along the way, because otherwise we just might not be here tomorrow. So, taking that into account with making sure that we're talking to the right people to address those needs is, I think, where it starts.
Thank you. Rachel, your thoughts?
Yeah, so when I was thinking quick wins, I think of our latest red tape that we kind of got slapped with, and thinking about fertilizer use and that kind of thing. And there's technology out there already that we could be using, and farmers aren't adopting right away. So I think nitrogen stabilizers, I think it is out there and we can use it and we know it works. Why aren't farmers using it? And so I don't know if that's a sales thing, if that's why do I have to spend another $5 a ton thing, or however much it is on a ton of fertilizer. And it just is it's something that I know is better for the climate, and I know would be better for your pocket too, because I'm not losing nitrogen all of a sudden. It's staying there for the crop to be used, but it's just not adopted quite as much as I expect it to be. And it's another weird, hard conversation to have with the end user. So yeah, I think if we can just get guys to use technology that's already there, and then we can start talking about using new technology. And it's still crazy to me that that we're slow to pick up on this kind of thing. So
Stuart, from your research that you've done, I mean, I know you've looked into some of these areas. What are the barriers to the use of existing technology?
One of the challenges is the trade side of things. So, countries around the world have rejected the import of genetically modified crops, and they're saying, similar things along the lines for gene editing. Countries are moving more, particularly commodity import firms are moving more to saying Canadian exporters have to quantify improved sustainability, or how the production of a shipment has reduced GHG emissions, for example. So I think one of the areas that we may face a lot of challenge over in the coming years is how does Canadian agriculture better document the sustainability advances that the industry is consistently making, but in some cases we just lack the data or even agreed upon methodologies on how to document things. So Canada and the EU have very different metrics on how we define sustainability. So if Canada's ag sector is making sustainability increases from our metrics, yet the European Union doesn't recognize our metrics, we're going to run into some international conflicts about whose metrics are the right ones. And so I see some potential challenges at a global level as to, how do we measure and quantify just what is sustainable advancements with, towards mitigating climate change.
And I think this question around trade is a really important one, and that the differences in regulations and rules and definitions in the different countries. Kelly, from industry, obviously your company tries to or has products that go internationally. What kind of barriers are you facing in terms of those sort of different rules and regulations in different countries?
They're very significant. We could have a complete panel on that topic alone. But I'll use the biofertilizer as an example that we're trying to develop here. And if we try and get that product across the board, then it gets flagged by the EPA and they want to evaluate it. But if we were actually making that product in the United States, then at the state level, it's perfectly fine to register that product. I'll go to Rachel's comments about the nitrification inhibitors, and they require registration here in Canada. So it's a slower process. In the United States, those are freely marketable, much easier. Will they be accepted? That's part of the process. The cost for registration isn't significant, but the time is. Yeah.
All right, fine. Any other thoughts on what we could do to sort of have some quick wins or try and even address some of these challenges that you have, the three of you have raised?
I think the Health Canada announcement in the spring that gene editing is going to be treated as conventional plant breeding, we just need, hopefully within a few weeks, the CFIA will follow a similar announcement, because I think that's going to enable all of the public sector research capacity within Canada. So AAFC, NRC, the universities, to get into that research space, which the cost to commercialize GM varieties made it reprehensible for the public sector to be engaged. So gene editing offers a tremendous benefit and relatively low cost to put greater technologies into crop varieties, into other inputs, the chemical side of things, the fertilizer side of things, that can really make significant contributions to helping agriculture be much more of a climate-friendly sector. And we're going to need all of our capacity. So we need the public and the private sectors, but we also, I think, we need funding mechanisms that draw in the producer perspective. So a lot of times when we talk about the P3s, it's just the public and private sectors. So we need this P4 concept where the voice of the producer organizations are at the table talking about, what are the technologies that as Rachel's mentioned, what works for her, and we need more regional strategies. So I think we need to evolve beyond just the public-private, and we need to get to the producers at the table as well.
And I think the producers understand the challenges with markets, the different markets that they're facing, which may not necessarily be understood by others that are not necessarily trying to really not only produce but get their products out there to those markets. I think that's a really good point. Any last thoughts on this topic? But I think that gene editing is a really interesting area, and obviously for Genome Canada, it's an area of great importance to us. There are still some differences in how different countries treat gene-edited products. So I think that could still be a barrier to export of our products, but I think it's a great move by Canada to come out with a statement that gene-edited crops particularly would be treated as conventional plant breeding. All right, so maybe the last sort of topic that we can get your thoughts on is around trade-offs, because we know that for every decision that we make about sustainable agriculture, there will be trade-offs that may differ for different stakeholders in the coalition. So what do you see are the main trade-offs from your perspective, and what makes the trade-off not work for you? So what would be a sort of, I guess, a no-go if you had to trade, if you had to give something up for the ability to actually have innovation in the area of sustainable agriculture? So Stuart, we can start with you, your perspective from.
Thanks, Karen. I think one of the challenges, or the trade-offs, is going to be the international recognition of metrics, as I sort of touched on a little bit earlier. Kelly's done a good job of highlighting just the difference in regulatory requirements between commercializing in the United States and Canada. So, and we've got a long history of challenges with the EU on biotech, but also on commodity trade with China. So as we increasingly move at a global level, certainly Canadian agriculture, I will argue Canadian farmers are some of the most sustainable producers of crops at a global level. But if our metrics and our methodologies for assessing that sustainability increase aren't recognized, then our contributions towards improved sustainability likewise won't be recognized. So the concern comes in this area is just the lack of international agreement or harmonization around sustainability metrics or methodologies, and how can whatever the Canadian ag sector decides to adopt, how can we be reasonably confident that we will get international recognition for what we're putting in place?
And to follow on with that question, I mean, who should be at that table to have those conversations? Because ultimately, I think some of these discussions are between governments, but it can't just be from the government's perspective. I mean, there needs to be input from multiple stakeholders. So who needs to be there to have to?
It comes down to be, should this fall within the World Trade Organization? Because all of this would be empirically based requirements, which is what the WTO requires. Yeah, we've seen within the Convention on Biological Diversity a tendency to slide away from empirical evidence and be much more emotional based. So I think, certainly Canada and the United States have proven that through the North American Free Trade Agreement, and that evidence-based regulation is really the metric to success. So I think there would be a preference to having this fall under the World Trade Organization and its evidence-based international approach to this.
Thanks, great. Rachel, from your perspective, what do you think of the trade-offs? And for you, both as an agronomist and also now being very close to the farm, what would you trade and what wouldn't you trade to really be able to have sustainable agriculture?
I think I've thought about this a lot, as kind of the trade-offs, and ultimately I talk about trade-offs all day with my farmers. But I think farmers, we have to be willing to try new things. And for people, that's very hard because to try new things, you have to spend more money typically. And so you see margins every day are smaller and smaller. And all of a sudden, like last year, you have a drought to go through and you spent extra money on this crop trying to be innovative and try new things and be more sustainable, and now you lost more money at the end of the day. So it's tricky that way. I would say one of the biggest trade-offs is if I'm going to try new things, I need to see a return. Either that's higher yield, or that is preparing I save money on fertilizer, or I ultimately made more money at the end of the day, is kind of one of the biggest trade-offs that we see. Because if I'm spending more money and I'm losing more money, that doesn't make sense when this is my career, this is my way of life. I think in order for guys to try new products and try new things, they need to be good fits for our farm. I'm not really willing to try something that's a good fit in a completely different climate from my farm and different farming practices and that kind of thing. And it just, at the end of it needs to make sense for my operation, or I'm not really interested. And I think that's a lot of farmers is we can be a little bit stubborn, but lots of times it's a generational thing. We've had this farm for 100 years. We're not willing to screw up next year kind of deal. So I don't know, might be tough.
And I think something that, I've just come to realize makes sense in farming, particularly in farming crops. You have already decided what you're going to plant. It's not even in the spring. You've decided a year or maybe 2 years in advance about what will be planted in your fields. So it's not easy to also pivot and necessarily sometimes try new products, especially if the risk is that the products are not going to work and they're going to cost you money. So it's not an area that you can quickly adapt and change, because this is long-term planning as well.
Yeah, I think exactly that. And to it, I think I see it directly correlates with, are we predicting this is going to be a good year and we're going to have good yields at the end of the year? If we have precipitation and everything has gone right, price of fertilizer is right, everything is going right, guys are going to spend more money in season. And because we're hedging our bets that we're probably going to fill the bins at the end of the year. So maybe we'll try to get that extra 3 bushels or whatever the company's promising us. But on a year like last year for us, it was complete drought pretty much, or even this year, like extreme moisture. Guys aren't willing to spend extra money because they don't know what is out there. They don't know what is actually in the field. Sure, it looks good from the road, but I heard time and time again this season, once they got in the combine and they got in their wheat, it was 60 bushels. When we're driving down the road and we're looking at the wheat and it looks awesome, we're thinking, man, we've got 85, 90 bushels in there. So it's hard. It's hard when you don't know what the check is going to be at the end of the year. They don't know. So how can I ask a guy to spend money on a product that I don't actually know if it's going to work? That kind of thing. So
Rachel raised a good point earlier, Karen, that some research in the ag economics shows that the adoption lag is just over 20 years from the time a technology is first commercialized until it reaches peak adoption is about 22 or 23 years. So we could, from a commercialization or an innovation perspective, we can think, oh man, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But as Rachel said, unless the farmer sees a way for them to make $1 an acre more, or whatever number they need to increase their profitability, they're going to say, this simply doesn't justify my investment to adopt the technology, because the risk of me not being any more profitable is too great, and I want to see a higher return on my investment. And so it might take them 8 or 12 years before they get around to adopting a specific innovation until the profit level has reached sort of what they're comfortable in terms of outlaying to adopt the technology.
So when we think about supporting research area in innovation, how do we take those factors into consideration? Because I think we sometimes think if we're going to invest in this, and it's a great advance in the field, but it's going to take a number of years before it gets adopted. How do we either change that, or how do we factor that into what we do in terms of Kelly, from a company's perspective, how do you do that? How does your company factor this lag in uptake?
Yeah, we don't have a single solution, to be honest, but I know that, I think to really truly address it, there has to be a paradigm shift in just the whole thought process. I think where Rachel is, there's a lot of large farms, and I think understanding that large geographic area is more challenging than if you're in a smaller farm in Prince Edward Island or here in Ontario, and that factors in significantly. We've seen this over and over again just doing trials. I think, lower water volumes, more acres, less time, less passes over the field in Western Canada make it more challenging to truly help farmers there. Whereas if you're a potato farmer where you're going across your fields many more times, smaller acres, we see the ability to improve things much easier. So how do we address those large acre farmers in a truly sustainable way is a really, really tough question that we don't have the answer to.
That's that's a really interesting point, given in many ways, that a lot of the economic benefits are from the very large farms. They're from all sizes of farms, but then, and sometimes the products are created for the large farms, but then they are the ones that the sustainability might be harder to actually manage.
Or maybe they just don't work that well as well. I think it's just too much to ask for a product to work over 20,000 acres consistently. Yeah. Why would it if the conditions are different within regions of those fields?
Yeah, they need within one farm multiple different products to deal with that. Well, we're actually coming to the end of this. This has been a really fascinating discussion. I don't know about the audience, but I have enjoyed it immensely. Before we go, maybe we can ask each one of you just your final thoughts on what you would like people to take away from today. I think we certainly have identified a number of challenges, but also some potential pathways and thoughts about where we can make some change, where we can actually have some improvements and opportunities. So Rachel, maybe you can just what's your final message to everybody?
I think I talked a lot today about the bottom line and farmers. We need to make money, but that's like everybody else. We go to our job because we have to pay for our house and food on our table, that kind of thing. But they care so much about their land and their operation. And if we weren't conscious about the climate and climate change and we didn't want to be sustainable, there wouldn't be very many farms left in Canada. So I think farmers are excellent climate champions, I guess. They do a great job with their land. And it's just, you look at farms that are 100 plus years old. We're around because farming's literally in their blood. They know what they're doing. And I think we could trust farmers to do the best thing for the climate and for the land and that kind of thing. And
I don't think we actually, especially since many of us live in urban areas and think about, haven't necessarily visited farms. I think sometimes we don't fully appreciate the amount of work, and really the how important farming and farms are to the country. So I would like to say thank you, because I think it's incredible. We kind of take for granted where our food comes from sometimes these days without really thinking about how it gets there.
Come for a farm tour anytime.
I'd love to. Next time I'm in Manitoba. Kelly, your thoughts, final, what would you like people to leave with?
I mean, I think for us, it starts with engagement and making sure that, I think if there was anything that we could change, it would be the dialogue between all stakeholders and making sure that we can come to the right compromise, to satisfy everybody. And that's the challenge.
Great, thank you. And Stuart, I'll give you the last word. So,
Sure. I think that the important thing is to look at some of the mandates. Rachel mentioned the fertilizer GHG emission mandate, and the European Union's F2F is another example of where the political realities is simply never going to align with the agricultural realities of how food production works. That we're not going to reduce fertilizer emission reductions by 30% in 8 years when it's taken the past 25 years to reduce the amount of nitrogen by almost 30%, which is some of our research. So we need to get better alignment of the agricultural food production practicalities and some of the intended target reductions or that can contribute to climate change.
Right. Well, thank you again. Thank you all very much. We are at pretty much at the end of this session. I really appreciate your thoughts, your ideas, and I definitely would like to thank all the audience for listening in today. I hope that you have found this informative, and to thank the CSPC for allowing us to have this session today. And I hope that I will see you in different sessions in different areas quite soon.